Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. There's not a ghost in my house. Sally, are you running from me, Sally? I'm not running, Jessica. You tried to leave before I could catch you. I'm busy, Jessica. I work, meaning I don't work. Let's say you don't do 9 to 5. Oh, I work, Sally. I work plenty. I work around the clock working. If you call what you do work. So that's another rumor you've been spreading about me? I'm a bum now? I don't spread rumors, Jessica. My name is Jesse, and you know it, since you throw it around a lot. You're paranoid. Oh, really? I'm paranoid? That's why the whole congregation just snickered at me? I have no idea what you're talking about. And the preacher just called me imaginative. No idea why. No idea, huh? You haven't shared my new insurance claims around lately. I don't have time for your nonsense. Nonsense? You're calling the House of Horrors? You sold me nonsense? We don't entertain ghost stories, Jessica. No, you just entertained stealing my money and handing me a haunted house. Honestly, Jessica, you have a wild imagination. It's just an old house. Can you try to tone it down? Oh, I'm the liar now? You didn't disclose anything. You sold me a paranormal vortex. Jessica, I sold you a house. I didn't sell you a haunted house. Older homes are a little noisy. A little noise? The lights flicker on and off like a damn hallway disco. Battering rams shake the walls. Something cold keeps stalking me from the laundry room to the upstairs. And then there's the whispers in the landing mirror. And I'm supposed to sleep with the corner shadows slithering past. Jessica, church parking lots are not the time or place for your ghost stories. Your wiring is older, however. The house is perfectly fine and passed our inspection. Your insurance policy will not be covering your broken dish claims or any other fabrications. You mean my floating dishes claims before they rain and smash, plus the floating beds claims, and the floating curtains, and the floating Emmy? I don't know what you're trying to prove, but it's not working. You're making a scene here for nothing. Please, seek help. Oh yeah, it's all in my head, Sally. Is that the game we're playing? The entire town knew about. This is a county, not a town, Jessica. Fine. Sally. It's a hamlet, village, royal ripoff capital, in the middle of dumb duck nowhere. 'Cause menial technicalities matter more than the fact that you sold me a freaking haunted house. Even the locksmith threw the keys and ran. It seems you enjoy stirring up drama, Jessica. We will resume this conversation when you are calm. I've got a damn good reason to be dramatic. Drama is trying to live in that place without getting dragged into the walls myself. I wake up to doors slamming. I try to go to bed and the roof howls. Look at me, Sally. Not at this crowd. I don't know what you expect from me. It's not my problem. It's yours. No, you sold me a nightmare. And now I'm making it your problem. The whole damn place is cursed. And now I've got a town full of people looking at me like I'm some damn lunatic. I want my money back. I'm not giving you any money, Jessica. You signed the papers. You knew what you were getting. Yeah, I signed the papers, but you didn't tell me the house bled. I'm swimming in a demon ditch, and you knew it, didn't you? That's enough. I didn't do anything wrong. You're the one who... You act like you don't do anything wrong. Instead, you've been telling people I'm crazy. You've made everyone think I've lost my mind. But I'm gonna make sure everyone knows the truth. I don't know what you want me to do, Jessica. The house is yours. If it's that big a deal, you can move. I have to go. We're all aware you have your jolly holiday to pack for. But you're going to handle this first. My holidays are well earned, Jessica. Unlike some... You're saying that I haven't earned a holiday? I'm saying you need to take a step back. I would love to step back, Sally. I would love to just go home and enjoy a nice Sunday brunch without my forks levitating above my head. It's not in my head, Sally. It's above my head. And I have loads of video proof online. It all went viral. None of that has been proven to be real. Proven? You want me to prove it? How about you come over for a meal? You can even spend the night. The guest room has floating lamps and screaming furniture that likes to rearrange itself. I'm sorry you feel this way, Jessica, but your home purchase and insurance policy can't help you with your haunting. My haunting. When are we going to acknowledge the literal hell you've put me through? The place is cursed, and you sold it to me with a smile on your face. And now I'm stuck in this ghost infestation, and you ruined my rep to boot. No one is answering my ads. Maybe no one needs your services here, Jessica. Will that be before or after the rumors you spewed? 'Cause they think I'm all crazy, right? 'Cause you didn't do anything wrong, right? I did not. I went out of my way to help you in an emergency. You were an opportunist. We all helped you, Jessica. Helped me how? Don't smirk at me. You ripped me off. I want my money back so I can move to a normal home with visitors that don't drop through ceilings. If you want people to visit you, Jessica, perhaps you should share more in community spirit rather than silly stories. I've had plenty of guests, Sally. Like rocks through my window, kids screaming, and slow cars passing. Not to mention the 24/7 live-in spook party you sold. And what about all the tents on your front lawn? The Ghost Hunters Unanimous team? They're here for the one-night challenge. Do you have a permit for those theatrics? Excuse me? You didn't inform us that you were converting the property to a theater. We may have to cancel your insurance. You bloody snake! Unlike your stories, Jessica, your contract states you must inform us first if you run a business from the premises. And unlike your business slogans, I will be certain to share my bad experience with your real estate and insurance firm to my new 57K ghost followers. And I will sue you for defamation. And I'll sue you back. What defamation, Jessica? You shared my personal claims to half of the town, congregation, and our preacher. I believe we all count as witnesses to your ruining of my reputation. Yeah? Let's go to court. No, don't. Jesse, we can review your claim on the 17th when I return. No, Sally. We can review all my claims before you leave for your palm trees on Tuesday. I'm sure it can wait. It's waited long enough. And, Sally, we may have additional info to review. And what might that be? Jesse? I am considering turning my ghost house into a business. We need to ensure the... Ouch! Do you always slam your Buick doors like that? Her. I remember her. The first time I laid eyes on her. She knocked at the wooden door. I knew it wasn't an adult knocking. I just know these things. The sound was light, timid, and just a bit too low on the door to belong to someone grown. I walked across my living room, the floorboards creaking under my weight, and unlocked the door. As I pulled it open, the hinges groaned softly. And there she was, standing on my porch, waiting for me. She came to me, and I knew it was her. I knew right away she was the one I'd been waiting for. I felt it. It's hard to put into words, but if I had to, it was like being struck by lightning in the pit of my stomach. A surge of electric energy coursing through me and ending in a sharp, tingling burst at the base of my skull. She was tiny, small even for her age, and her presence seemed to shrink further under the weight of the gray autumn sky. Her long, blonde hair framed her round cheeks, dampened slightly by the drizzle that had been falling all afternoon. Her light blue eyes, startling in their clarity, reflected the dull brown of my front door, as if they were trying to absorb everything around her. She smiled then, just a flicker of a smile, timid, shy. It might have been imperceptible to someone else, but I saw it. I knew it was there. "Hi," she said, her voice barely louder than the wind rustling through the bare trees. I crouched to her level, studying her face as if I might find answers etched in the softness of her features. "Hello," I replied, the word catching in my throat. Her small hands clutched a green box close to her chest, a makeshift tray hanging from her neck with an assortment of colorful packages. "I'm from Troop 195 of the Girl Scouts," she said, her voice steadier now, though still carrying a gentle, unpracticed rhythm. I'm selling cookies to finance our trip to Washington next year. Would you like to help? I blinked, her words pulling me from the strange fog that had overtaken me since I first saw her. I'd love to help, I said, forcing a smile. What exactly are you selling? She brightened, her confidence growing with every word. I have caramel chocolate chip, do-si-dos, lemon-ups, and thin mints. I nodded slowly, leaning one arm on the door frame. Those all sound delicious. And they did, each one of them. I wasn't lying. I'm not a liar. I've always tried to tell the truth, to open up to anyone who showed even the slightest interest in, well, in me. It's rare enough that someone does. Which ones would you suggest? I asked, genuinely curious. The do-si-dos are the most popular, she replied, a practiced response, one she'd probably used at every house she'd visited. I tilted my head. Are those your favorite? Her expression softened, her small fingers playing with the corner of a box in her tray. No, I like the Girl Scouts s'mores. But she hesitated, her eyes meeting mine. We're all out of those. She seemed genuinely saddened by that, and I could see it in her eyes. That's something I've always been able to do. Read people, see the emotions they hide behind words and smiles. It's a sensitivity I've had since I was a boy, and it hasn't faded with time. How about this? I said, my voice lowering, like I was sharing a secret. Give me 2 boxes of do-si-dos now, and when you get more Girl Scout s'mores, I want you to come back here and bring me 10 boxes of those. Her face lit up, her smile blooming into something real and full. It wasn't timid anymore. It was happy, proud. She looked like she'd just conquered a mountain, a small victory in a world that often feels insurmountable at her age. Really? She asked, her voice rising with excitement. Really? I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the cash. I handed it to her. She reached for it, her movements unhurried. And as she did, I let 3 of my fingers graze the back of her small hand. It was a fleeting touch, imperceptible to her, or at least I thought it was. But I noticed how her skin quivered ever so slightly under my fingertips, like the faintest ripple in still water. She quickly pulled the money back, her attention shifting as she counted it with practiced efficiency. Then, tucking the bills into the small pouch at her side, she handed me the 2 boxes with both hands. She held them out as though they were treasures, precious and fragile, the way a child often treats even the simplest things. Thank you so much, she said, her voice louder now, the earlier shyness melting away. I'm happy to help, I replied, meaning it. She turned to leave, clutching her tray of cookies like a prize. At the edge of the porch, she paused and looked back at me, her eyes wide and sparkling with gratitude. I promise I'll come back when we get more s'mores. I'll be waiting, I said, watching as she skipped down the driveway, her small frame disappearing into the gray drizzle. I stood there for a moment, holding the boxes of cookies in my hands, feeling a strange warmth that wasn't entirely explainable. It wasn't about the cookies or the sale. It was about the way her smile had lit up the gray, how her small victory had momentarily lifted inside me. I closed the door and set the boxes on the counter. For a long time, I just stared at them, my mind replaying the exchange. Something about it had settled deeply in me, a seed waiting to grow. But her room wasn't ready. I needed to get it ready for her, to make it perfect, comfortable, a place where she could grow strong and healthy and happy. She deserved that, so I worked at it tirelessly, transforming the cold, gray basement into a beautiful sanctuary. The walls, once lifeless and bare, were painted a soft, light pink, the kind of color that whispered warmth and innocence. A bed with a quilted blanket sat in the corner, flanked by a small table with a lamp shaped like a butterfly. I built a shelf, filling it with hundreds of children's books, toys, and dolls. Every detail mattered. A camera sat discreetly in the top corner of the room, its lens fixed on the space where she would sleep and play. It wasn't about control. It was about safety. I added a lock to the heavy wooden door, one that could only be opened from the outside. It wasn't to trap her, no. It was to keep the world out, to ensure nothing could hurt her. The best part, though, was the shopping. I spent hours picking out clothes for her, envisioning her wearing them, imagining how she'd look. I chose soft fabrics in bright, cheerful colors, clothes she could wear now, and some she'd grow into over time. Each piece felt like a step closer to her, to making her mine. And then I waited. I waited for her to come back. Days turned into weeks, and still I waited. The 2 bites of cookies sat on the counter, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to open them. Instead, I would trace my fingers along their edges, touching the cardboard like I had touched her hand. Sometimes, I'd lift one to my face, inhaling the faint mix of packaging and something else, something peculiar and fleeting. The smell of her, the anticipation was unbearable. A constant hum under my skin. Each creak of the floorboards, each knock at the door, sent my heart racing, hoping it would be her. But she didn't come back, not yet. I knew she would, though. She had to. I'd made everything perfect. And then, one day, her knock came. It wasn't just any knock. It was her knock. I knew it instantly, even before my body moved to rise from the couch. I felt it in my chest, in my veins. A spark of anticipation coursing through me. The moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I'd been preparing for, was here. The chance to see her again, to look into her bright eyes, to show her what I had built for her, because of her. Because she was the one. It was her. I crossed the room in a few quick strides, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. There she stood, with that smile. It wasn't as shy as before, more certain now. Like she knew she was welcome, like she belonged here. In her hands, she held a neat stack of cookie boxes, her reason for coming back. Or so she thought. I smiled at her, a warmth creeping into my voice that I couldn't mask. "It's good to see you again," I said. She beamed, her cheeks flushed from the cool air. "I have your cookies, and since it's such a big order, I added a pack of lemon ups for free." "Well, now that's very kind of you," I replied, my tone light and friendly. I slipped my hands into my pockets, pretending to search for the cash. My fingers met empty fabric, as I knew they would. I hadn't carried any money in weeks. The truth was, I didn't want to hand her the money here on the porch. Not this time. I needed her to come inside. I looked up at her, feigning a small chuckle. "Looks like I forgot my wallet. It's inside, in the kitchen," I said, gesturing behind me. It wasn't a lie. I don't lie. I never lie. My wallet was in the kitchen, sitting right on the counter, next to the untouched cookie boxes from her first visit. The ones I had been saving for this moment. Her smile didn't falter. She nodded, clutching the boxes tighter. "Oh, that's okay," she said, ever the accommodating Girl Scout. "Why don't you come in?" I asked, stepping aside and motioning to the warmth of the house behind me. "It's cold out there, and you've been walking all afternoon, haven't you?" She hesitated for a moment, her gaze flicking to the open door, the inviting glow of the living room beyond. Then she smiled again, this time with a hint of excitement, like this was just another part of her adventure. "Okay," she said, stepping inside. I closed the door behind her, the sound of the latch clicking into place, sending a thrill through me. It wasn't loud, but to me, it echoed. I turned to her, my smile steady, my heart pounding. "Make yourself at home," I said, my voice calm and even. "Let me grab that money for you." She nodded, her eyes wandering around the room, her curiosity as innocent as ever. She was perfect. Perfect. And she was finally here. Oh, do I remember her? The way her muffled cries felt against my left hand as I pressed it over her mouth, lifting her from the ground with my right arm. She bit down hard and kicked wildly, her small shoes landing against my legs, but I barely felt it. I told myself it was normal. She didn't understand. Not yet. She couldn't comprehend what I had done for her, what I had built, the sacrifices I had made. Not yet. Her body thrashed against mine as I carried her, her weight so light it felt like she might vanish. But she wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. I took her down the stairs, each step an echo in the stillness of the house, and through the door. Not a room. Not just any room. Her room. This was the place I had prepared for her. The place where she would grow. Where she would finally be safe. Where I could ensure nothing and no one could hurt her. I would see to that. Only me. I would witness every moment, every milestone. She would know, in time, how much I cared, how much I loved her. I threw her onto the bed, her small frame bouncing once before she scrambled back, pressing herself against the pink walls I had painted just for her. She screamed, her voice raw and high, tears streaming down her red face. "Please, let me go. Please," she begged, her words garbled through sobs, her tiny hands clawing at the quilted blanket I had chosen with such care. But I knew it would pass. It always passed. The crying, the yelling, the fear, it would all melt away after a few weeks. It always did. She just needed time to see. Time to realize that this wasn't what she thought it was. This was better. "It's okay," I said, my voice steady, calm, trying to cut through her cries. "You'll understand soon. I promise." Her tears only fell faster, and her words dissolved into incoherent sobbing. I watched her for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, but not from regret or hesitation. It was from the sheer anticipation of what was to come. This was just the beginning, and like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. But they didn't understand that. They didn't understand anything. They took her away from me just 3 days after she got here. 3 days. That's all the time we had. They stormed in like animals, breaking through the front and back doors, screaming, their boots pounding on the floors. I had walked in peace for years, and the guns. Oh, the guns. Pointed at me, me, who had kept her safe. Me, who had given her a sanctuary, a place where she could be loved, cared for, where she could grow without fear. They didn't see the love in my eyes, the care in my hands, the way I had worked so hard to make her life perfect. They only saw their own distorted version of the story, their judgment cutting through my truth. They didn't understand. Oh, I remember her. I've remembered her every single day for the past 24 years, 364 days, and 6 hours. I know because I've counted. I've counted every second, every breath, every heartbeat that has passed since the moment they tore her from me. But now, just a few more days, just a little more time, and we will be reunited. Finally, I've waited for this. I've prepared for it, because, like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. Dial tone. Dirges, Tijuana, Mexico. Pay phone. Outside Mercado El Popo, 1999. Sound of coins clinking, dialing tones. Aló? ¿Quién habla? Myra. Es Leah? Leah! Dios mío! I can't believe it's you. We've been going crazy here. Your mother comes to my house every day asking if I've heard from you. Where are you? Are you okay? I made it to Tijuana. I'm at a payphone near the market. The phone keeps eating my coins, so I don't have much time. You sound different. Your voice. You sound sick. Are you sick? I'm not sick, Myra. Just tired. So tired. Remember how we used to stay up all night studying for Senora Martinez's chemistry exams? This is different. I haven't really slept in days. Days? Leah, you're scaring me. Everything is scary here. Remember how we used to talk about leaving Venezuela? Making plans in your backyard? Drinking your mother's terrible café con leche? Sound of traffic passing, horns honking. Of course I remember. We were going to be roommates in Miami, get jobs at fancy hotels, maybe even meet Ricky Martin. We had everything figured out. We were so naive, Mayre. So stupid. We thought it would be like the movies. Save some money, buy a plane ticket, start a new life. But the visas, they kept rejecting us. And now you're with the coyotes. Leah, everyone here knows someone who didn't make it. Please come home. Home to what? The markets are empty, Mayra. The hospitals have no medicine. Remember when my little brother got dengue last year? Mama had to trade her wedding ring for antibiotics. I can't watch my family live like that anymore. Warning beep from the phone. Hold on. Need to add more coins. Sound of coins dropping. Myra, I have to tell someone. I can't keep carrying this alone. Tell me what? What happened? The group I'm with. There was this girl. My age, maybe younger. From Guatemala. The coyotes, they made her carry drugs inside her body. Little packets, like grapes. She cried all night before they made her swallow them. Dios mío, that's not even the worst part. There was this woman with us from El Salvador, in her 50s with grandchildren in Los Angeles. She showed us their pictures the first night. She couldn't keep up in the desert. Her legs just gave out. Leah, we left her there, Mayra, under a cactus. She begged us not to go. She promised she'd rest just for an hour, then catch up. I told them I would stay with her. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone. But she grabbed my arm, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "No, mi hija. One death is enough." She made me promise to go. She made me do it. Sound of crying, voice breaking. I had to go, Mère. I had no option. I had no option. I had to run to catch up with the group. I could hear her praying behind me, her voice getting fainter and fainter. We tried crossing that same night, but there was a massive drug bust happening near the crossing point. Cartel activity. Border patrol everywhere. Helicopters with searchlights. The coyotes said it was too hot, too risky. We had to turn back. Now we're stuck here in Tijuana, waiting to try again. And all I can think about is how we left her there, alone, with just those pictures of her grandchildren, sounds of street vendors calling out in Spanish. I can barely carry my own jacket now. It weighs more than all our school books combined. Remember how we used to complain about those heavy books? Bitter laugh. What I wouldn't give to be back in that classroom now. You can come back. Please, it's not too late. It is. There's no going back. The desert, it changes you, changes everything. I see things at night when we're trying to sleep. Shadows moving. Sometimes I think it's the border patrol. Sometimes something worse. The coyotes watch us constantly. One girl tried to run away last week. They caught her. She came back with bruises. She wouldn't explain. Background chatter in Spanish, English, and indigenous languages. Last night, we tried crossing through the river. Everyone said it would be safer than the desert. But there were farmers on the cliffs above the river. Farmers with rifles, Myra. They didn't shout warnings, didn't tell us to go back. They just started shooting. The water, voice breaking. The water turned red. People were screaming, trying to swim back. But the current was so strong. We had to stay underwater, holding our breath, praying they wouldn't see us. A mother lost grip of her baby's hand. I can still hear her screaming, "Por Dios, Leah." Some people just disappeared under the water, never came back up. The farmers just stood there, watching, like they were hunting animals, not watching people die. Human beings, parents, children, dreams. Warning beep from the phone. I keep thinking about what Papa used to say before he died, about America being the land of opportunity. But he never knew about this part. The nightmare you have to survive to reach those opportunities. If they catch me, I've heard stories about the detention centers, but I can't go back, Mayra. There's nothing left in Venezuela. There's your family. There's me. We love you. Love doesn't fill empty stomachs. Can't buy medicine. Can't build a future. the inflation. It's worse now than when I left. My mother's entire month's salary can barely buy a week's groceries. I have to make it, Mayra. I have to. Sound of more coins being inserted. You know what I think about most? Those stupid telenovelas we used to watch after school. Remember how we'd laugh at how dramatic they were? Now I understand. Real life, real desperation. It's more dramatic than any telenovela. Leah, please. You're trembling. I can hear it in your voice. I am. I'm scared all the time. But I'm also angry. Angry that this is what it takes. That we have to risk our lives just for a chance at a decent life. That farmers with rifles get to decide who lives and who dies. Distant police sirens. The coyotes are signaling. We're moving again tonight. Mayra, if something happens to me. No, don't you dare say goodbye. Listen to me. If something happens, tell my mother I understand now. Why she cried when she found out I was leaving. Tell her I'm sorry for the pain I'm causing her, but not for trying. Tell her what she always told us. La esperanza es lo último que se pierde. Hope is the last thing we lose. Leah, please, and Mayra. That night before I left, when we stayed up planning our future, those dreams we shared, keep them. Maybe not Miami, maybe not the fancy hotel jobs, but something better than this. Promise me you'll keep hoping. I promise. But you have to promise to stay alive. I'll try. I have to go. They're waiting. Don't forget me, okay? Never. Leah, wait. Te quiero, Mayre. Maybe next time. Maybe I'll call you from the other side. Sound of coins running out, followed by the click of the phone being hung up. Then a dial tone. The cabin in the cave. The sun began to fade behind the gray, overcast plateau that Ethan was hunting on. And darkness began to take over the lonely Mesa de Blanco wilderness once more. It wasn't long ago when the already threatening sky had turned an angry, boiling, black color, and it had begun to rain down hectic sheets of bitter snowflakes and tiny shards of stinging ice. He squinted furiously around him, looking for any sign of the animal he was currently hunting. He had found some spoor of the massive beast a little way back, and was a little surprised when he found out that the trail seemed to lead directly to the snow line of Mount Blanco, and then seemed to wind about the trees in the sparse forested areas. He knew its lair had to be nearby. Most people would have called the wilderness around the White Mesa beautiful, or serene, or perhaps breathtaking. But right now, in this bitter cold, he thought that maybe stark, bone-chilling, or bleak would better describe it. Ethan had seen this particular plot of God's good earth many times before, had wandered its trails, climbed its cliffs, waded its streams, and stalked its woods. It was referred to affectionately by most of the people in Ethan's profession as Greenhorn's grave. It had been many years since he had been in this part of the Southwest, and for good reason. The game was sparse, and the land was inhospitable. The local townsfolk of Mesa Pueblo had sought out Ethan the last time he was at the local trading post selling his furs, and had told him of how, for the last 3.5 weeks, they have been tormented by a gigantic ghost cat, and that if there is anything he should not do, it would be to go out at night. Apparently, not soon after the last full moon, the livestock around the sleepy village of Mesa Pueblo started going missing. Large livestock. There were holes ripped through fences, and large tufts of white fur caught sticking to barbed wire, but no bodies were left behind. People started seeing the phantom cat ghosting about outside of town, and swore that it had glittering pink eyes. It loved killing livestock, but within a week, it had started targeting children. Any poor child wandering too far away was very liable to be snatched up, especially during night hours. There was very little blood. Apparently, the giant wildcat was taking all of this food back to its lair to eat the majority of it, and leaving nothing behind. It was the largest animal any of the people had ever seen, even larger than a grizzly in size, but only short glimpses had ever been seen of it so far. There was no noise made when it attacked, not even from its victims. The majority of the people of Mesa Pueblo were elderly and children, with scarcely a man between 15 to 50. They said they would like to buy Ethan's services and have him hunt down the giant ghost cat. The prospect of hunting this dangerous and legendary game, albeit in the unforgiving Mesa de Blanco region, intrigued Ethan. And to think of what price the pelt would sell for when the deed was done. It seemed like a profitable situation, but only a fool jumps headlong into the dark. So he quickly went about gathering more information about this incredible beast. Most people were too scared to say anything useful. But a boy on a ranch on the eastern outskirts of town said he saw it, and could even draw how big it was. Ethan watched in stunned silence as the boy pulled out a piece of charcoal and started making long, hard lines along the wall of one of the outer barns. When the boy was done drawing, he wiped his brow and stepped back to admire his work. On the peeling barn wall was the outline of an enormous cougar, and the height of its shoulder went above Ethan's head. The kid wasn't a bad artist, Ethan had to admit, but the thing was way too big. Really, kid? You must be joking. That's bigger than a bear. The kid emphatically shook his head in the negative, then threw his hand toward the wall to emphasize his work. Grande fantasma gatto, espiritu gatto, the boy exclaimed. But when Ethan shook his head, the boy sighed dramatically in exasperation, and then grabbed the cuff of his jacket and led him to the other side of the barn. There is where he saw the paw print the enormous cougar had left behind in the mud. Ethan's foot easily fit in it. Ethan was no small man. When Ethan returned to Trading Post, a few eager locals looked up hopefully, wondering if he would take the job. "I'm going to need an advance," stated Ethan. He was going to use some of the advance to upgrade his old equipment. Ethan's current arms didn't have enough power to do the job, and they also had distinctive quirks that made firing them extremely dangerous in life or death situations. If he was going to do the job, he was going to do it right. A few minutes later, after meeting with the elder chief and obtaining the advance, Ethan was at the local gun shop. Old Bessie was an aging scattergun, well beyond her years of useful service. She was traded for the largest caliber rifle they had, a Winchester Model 1886, chambered to fire a .50 caliber Buffalo killing round. It held 9 rounds in a rotating clip, and he was sure it would be able to put out the firepower he would need to put it down. If not with one shot, maybe 2. The gun shop owner wouldn't even hardly look at the worn Colt Patterson he was carrying. Cap and ball were frowned upon these days. So, he decided to keep the old .36 caliber as another backup. When Ethan started haggling over the price of the Colt 45 Single Action Army 45 SAA, the shopkeeper just put her hands meaningfully around his hands, which were still holding the gun, and said, "Tu mantienes?" Ethan grunted in response. "Fine, but I'm just borrowing it. Do you have bullets?" "Oh, and gunpowder." An hour or so later, and Ethan had found lodgings at a homestead around the west side of town, in the area where most of the sightings happened, and at a place which had been devastated by the ghost cat. Grandma Theodora Eckets ran a pretty decent operation, breeding horses. Her business had recently come crashing down when Phantasmagato had started hauling off her male studding stallions in the middle of the night. Now she only had a couple of foals and a mare or 2 to her name. Her work hands and her daughter wouldn't leave her, however. They said they never would, no matter how bad it got. The ranch was their life. Grandma Eckets wasn't complaining. In fact, she was in a cheery mood since she found out Ethan was going to be staying with them, because she had another person to cook for. She at once proclaimed Ethan too skinny, and went about filling his plate with all sorts of tender meats, all seasoned perfectly and cooked to perfection. Ethan had excused himself after dinner and went out back to sight in his weapons. He placed several cans and bottles on various posts around the main barn area, and then cut a circle in the side of the barn itself to serve as some basic targets. The trapper smiled to himself as he began to twirl the .45 Colt SAA around his right index finger. Then he twirled it a little faster. Then he switched hands and continued to twirl with his left, all in one fluid motion. Then suddenly, the gun ceased moving, and the barrel aimed directly at the nearest bottle. Ethan fired from the hip, and the bullet cored into the fence post below the target bottle. He fired again, and it went wide. On the third shot, the bottle exploded. Ethan finished with a last twirl and replaced the SAA in its shiny new hip holster, all in one smooth movement. Clapping could be heard from behind him, and then a low whistle. Ethan turned to see Grandma Eckett's beautiful daughter, Christina, standing there, hands on her hips, half smile on her lips. Standing next to her was Jose, the ranch's youngest occupant, and he was holding onto the top of his cowboy hat with one hand and had an astonished look on his face. Jose's mouth hung open, revealing crooked teeth. "Nice shootin' there, stranger. That bottle didn't know what was coming. And what fancy gunplay," said Christina. "He is like some gunslinger straight from the Wild West." "How did you do that, mister?" wondered Jose aloud. Ethan shrugged. "I have a lot of time on my hands, and not a terrible lot of things to fill it with. This calms my nerves." "Let's see it again, mister. Shoot something else." Ethan nodded, then turned back to the targets, standing stock still. He stood there for a good 10 seconds, lasting until the tension could be snapped with a knife. Ethan pulled out the age 36 Colt revolver, quicker than it takes a bolt of lightning to hit the ground, right-handed, and fired 3 times in a row. 2 cans and a bottle met their untimely demise. "Amazing!" cried Jose, visibly awed. "Well now, with shootin' like that, we sure don't have nothin' to worry about as far as that white cougar that's been prowlin' around, eatin' our people and cattle." "Where'd you learn to do that?" wondered Christina, quite astonished at the impressive display of marksmanship. "My father, some. I taught most of it to myself." "Really? Really like a gunslinger," said a woozy Jose, the excitement getting to him a little and making him stumble. "I got a sight in the rifle now," said Ethan, pulling the Winchester 1886 out of the holster on his back. He worried over it a bit before kneeling down and aiming at the round circle he cut into the barn. It wasn't long at all before he fired. 3 times. The sound was deafening. "Holy cow, mister! I never heard nothing so loud in my life." Ethan offered the gun to Jose. "Want to try? I'm warning you, though. It kicks like an ornery mule." Jose shook his head emphatically. "No." To witness such perfection was enough. Ethan walked over to the barn and examined his shots. They were closely grouped, lower down, and slightly to the left of center in the circle. It was almost full dark before Ethan was satisfied enough with his arms to go inside and turn in. Now he was out here, on the snowy and desolate Mesa de Blanco plateau, with only his guns for company. And he was stalking an enormous albino cougar through the unforgiving wilderness, and Ethan's prey was a proven man-eater. If it spotted Ethan first, he was sure that he wouldn't even hear the damn thing at all before it had its fang-ridden mouth around his neck. The struggle would be brief. Then it would most likely haul Ethan's bloody corpse back to its lair to munch on at its own leisure. Grim thought that. Still, he was sure he could put the monster down with a good shot or two from the .50 caliber Winchester rifle. It really all came down to who saw the other first. But Ethan was also beginning to worry about the weather. It was starting to snow even harder, and the wind was picking up. With full dark right around the corner, getting caught out in a storm like this could be quickly fatal. He trudged through the icy, blinding snow, eager to find some kind of shelter, or, at worst, a large snowbank he could dig his way into and spend the night. Ethan quickly came up against an impassable, nearly vertical cliff wall, and he skirted along it arbitrarily to the left, keeping the cliff within arm's length to his right. Ethan stoically made it about another half-mile before finding the going almost impossible and the visibility worse than nil. The cold was making his limbs and face very numb, and it was getting harder to move with every strenuous, aching step. Then, like a shining beacon of blessed hope, Ethan managed to catch a glimpse of what appeared to be some kind of torchlight, and it couldn't be farther than 20 feet away. Even in this hellish storm, he was sure he could make it. Ethan stumbled into a cave not a moment too soon, his strength about to completely give out. A cozy series of somber lanterns were lit along the left cave wall, hanging from studs nailed into support posts or sitting ensconced in cleverly made recesses notched into the rock wall. The cave was unusually warm and inviting, at least when compared to outside. It seemed to have been mostly man-made and was almost smooth. Such was the care that had been made when the tough, mineral-streaked rock had been picked at and blasted thoroughly by dynamite, by at least several men for a very, very long time. Not far in, maybe about 50 yards from the cave entrance, and relieved to be out of the storm, Ethan came upon a quaint mining shack. Its wooden planks built right into the side of the shaft itself. The door to the shack was wide open and was hanging at a severe angle, nearly off its hinges. Ethan also noticed there were some scratches on the wall near the door jamb, but his brain was becoming foggy, and it didn't completely register. He was just so god-awfully cold and tired. There had to be some kind of boa or chair in that old shack that he could sleep on, just for a little while, until the storm passed and daybreak came. The weary trapper stumbled into the cabin and ineffectually tried to close the broken door behind him. He soon gave up and looked around the room in slumped lethargy. It was dim in here, only one low-lit lantern on a makeshift wooden table in the center of the room. There was only one other piece of furniture, which was a tattered cot in the corner of the room. But at least it seemed to be roomy enough to sleep two normal-sized men comfortably. Ethan put the rifle down in a clumsy motion on the center table, then lurched over to the bed in order to lie down. He had barely gotten his boots off and leaned his head back on the straw-filled pillowcase before he drifted off into a deep, seemingly endless sleep in which no dreams came. The last thing Ethan noticed before entering the warm sea of immeasurable darkness was that the bed smelled alarmingly like cat urine. Ethan awoke to find a half-ton of murderous, purring feline on top of his chest, apparently not shy to use Ethan as a bed warmer, sleeping the night away peacefully on what felt like a very full stomach. I should have known better, Ethan thought bitterly, as he eyed the massive canines poking awkwardly out of a foul-smelling cat jaw, not inches from his face. He could see tiny bits of meat still stuck in its oversized fangs. It didn't look like it could close its monstrous overbite. And right now, the thing was sawing logs away in a loud and sonorous, purring rumble that vibrated Ethan's chest. Its eyes were closed. Maybe. His arms were pinned to his side, and he knew he wouldn't be able to reach the SAA with either hand because the holster was in the wrong place to grab it under the mass of white fur and teeth that nearly smothered him. The rifle was a no-go, not until he got this cat off him. The .36 Patterson, however, Ethan drew the .36 in one smooth, slow motion of his right hand, barely even rustling the beast cougar's shaggy fur coat before thrusting the barrel into the cat's side and firing off 3 shots as fast as he could. The effect was instantaneous, loud, and very bloody. The cougar leapt to its feet and staggered off the bed before jumping back in shock. It knocked over the table and sent the rifle and lantern crashing to the floor, shattering it and leaving a burning puddle of kerosene. The enormous ghost cat faced Ethan with its bulbous, pink, glittering eyes, staring hatefully at him through the haze of gun smoke from the .36. It kept its wounded side carefully toward the rocky cave wall. Ethan wiped warm cougar blood off his bearded face. This was going to get ugly. It was somewhat dim in the cabin, the only light coming in through the broken door and the tiny lake of fire burning in the center of the room. And the shadows abounded, merged and commingled in a dizzying fashion. Ethan pulled the .45 single-action Army from its holster and aimed it directly at the snarling beast's skull with deadly precision and a steady arm. "Good night, Espiritu Gato," said Ethan under his breath as he pulled the trigger. Thunder boomed. Later that morning, a bedraggled, snow-studded Ethan stumbled back into town. The townsfolk gasped when they saw how his leathers were slashed deeply by what looked like a monstrous beast's paw. On the trapper's broad shoulders was the pelt of a giant, white, now docile cougar that would forever be remembered in Mesa Pueblo as Espiritu Gato, the midnight ghost cat that was slain by the lone trapper Ethan in mortal combat, finally bringing peace to a beleaguered town. Forever Christmas. "Roscoe, get off. Get off me. Get off, you crazy pup." My mangy mutt wakens me with a slobbery good morning before getting in a round of zoomies. I love him, but I'd also like to murder him. Before I do, though, I should really brush his teeth, I think, as I wipe off the sticky goop on my cheek. "Hey, hun, are you awake?" Lorraine, my wife, pops her head in the door, a festive robe tied around her. "Wait, it's Christmas," covered in dog slobber. "You forget to shut the door?" I chuckle. "Oops." She smiles back, the same one I fell in love with 11 years ago. I'd been a bit cynical about the whole true love thing in my youth. And then Lorraine bashed down all resistance with one glance. "Can you watch the kids for a sec? They're already going crazy, waiting to open presents," she says. "They're not the only ones," I reply. Then, lowering my voice so as not to ruin the magic that is an old man slithering his way down your chimney, "I can't wait to see the look on Nick's face when he unwraps the falcon." Lorraine slides over to me and kisses me. "Merry Christmas, baby," she whispers in my ear. It brings an overwhelming sense of comfort, but somewhere in me, I feel an unusual pang of despair. She slaps my butt and tells me to get up. The feeling retreats as I roll out of bed and throw on some loungers, excited to rile up Nick and Lily. I stomp my way downstairs. "Ho! Ho! Ho! Merry Christmas!" I say, giving my best Kris Kringle impression. "Daddy!" They both scream out, their mother's smile plastered across their face. "Look under the tree," shouts Nick. "Daddy, Santa ate all our cookies," counters Lily. We'd spent yesterday designing and baking gingerbread cookies for Santa. It is Lily's favorite. Since she was 3, we'd all designed a dozen gingerbread cookies, 5 of which were subsequently judged to be the plate cookies by Lily. She would walk confidently around each tray, carefully inspecting each cookie, letting out a scientific every now and then, before carefully selecting a cookie from each tray. One tray would have 2 cookies selected from it, upon which Lily would congratulate that person as the winner. "Did he, Lil?" I pick her up and place her on my shoulders and skip into the kitchen to check myself. Well, would you look at that? The man didn't leave a crumb behind. After wrapping all of the gifts, Lorraine and I always share a glass of wine and share the plate cookies. Lorraine, cookie in mouth, glass in hand, walks around to inspect my wrapping, criticizing my bungled tape job. Well, we'll just tell the kids that Santa had the elves in the training work on these ones, she teases. Oh, come on. I've gotten so much better. Look at that one in the center. It's pristine, I say. Honey, that one is mine. She kisses me on the cheek and curls up on the corner of the couch with me after snagging the last cookie from the tray. I was gonna have that, I say. Cookies are for those who can wrap. Sorry. You better give me that cookie right now, I say. Lorraine gives me a side eye before taking another bite. I wrap my arm over her shoulder and try to grab it out of her mouth, but she dodges me and scooches her way to the other end of the couch. Don't you take one more bite? She moves it slowly toward her mouth, opening wide. I grab her ankle and pull her toward me. Lorraine erupts with a giggle, still managing to hold the cookie out of my reach. I grab her arm and crawl toward her until I can pin her arm down and lean over to take a bite of the cookie while it's still in her hand. Thank you, babe. I lean down and take another bite. Fine, you can have it. Just let me go. I grab it from her and retreat to my side of the couch, making a show of eating the cookie, smacking my lips and swishing it down with a swig of wine. Lorraine kicks at my legs, smirks, finishes her glass of wine, and leans back into me. The house is silent. The kids long asleep. Wind sweeps gently outside as snow continues to fall, as it has throughout the day. Stockings hang above the lit fireplace, cane-shaped M&Ms, paint sticks, and Hot Wheels cozied up inside, waiting to be spilled across the floor tomorrow before being tossed aside for the next gift. Roscoe huffs in the corner, clearly displeased that we're up past his bedtime. Lorraine and I stay wrapped around each other, enjoying the silence that is so rare during the holiday season, and doze off until we awake sometime in the middle of the night and mosey to bed. The peace and warmth I felt last night feel so much more distant, and I get an urge to hold my wife. Lily is still staring in amazement at the empty plate. Something about it looks off. The red is no longer a merry holiday red, rather a crimson blood that paints Santa's sleigh and dyes his bag of presents. The plate clatters to the floor, Roscoe jumping in fright, bumping into Lily and knocking her to the floor. Lily starts to cry out as Lorraine pops into the kitchen behind me. Hey, sweetie, did Daddy drop the cookie platter? She says, sweeping Lily up in her arms. Are you okay? She asks me. I realize I've been standing frozen, my mind empty, frigid. I shake it off. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Lil. I didn't mean to scare you, I say, planting a kiss on her and then Lorraine. Why don't we open presents? I say. That elicits a roar from Nick in the other room, and Lily surges back, wiping her tears away. Now, before we open presents, you all know the drill. I set up the tripod, and we all huddle in front of the tree, the kids wrangling in Roscoe. We crushed it again, gang. I cheer, the stored image coming through my live eye, projecting the family photo through my retina. I quickly flick through the Christmas album, looking at the years past. 2 years ago, poor Roscoe was stuck with a cone on his head. 5 years ago was Lily's first Christmas. 7 was Nick's. 11 years ago was our first Christmas married in this house, before we adopted Roscoe later that year. Scrolling through now, the same wish every father has hits me. Please don't grow up. The thought causes a pain to ripple through me, erupting in a powerful headache. David, are you okay? My wife asks. I click out of the Live Eye screen, turn and face my family, but they're blurry. Hazy may be a more appropriate word for it. Like a memory faded over time, I reset the device and close my eyes. My heart is pumping. My head aches. Something about this moment feels off. A thought beats at the back of my head, but like a weighted box, it refuses to rise to the surface. By the revulsion coursing through my body, I'm not sure I want to know what's inside. The device resets, and I open my eyes. I exhale. The beating in my head subsides. Lorraine wraps her arm around me, no longer in a haze. Sorry, I just got the worst migraine. Things went blurry for a second, I admit. There's some aspirin in the kitchen. I'll get you some, she says. No, it's okay. It's gone. My live eye may have glitched. I grab her arm and pull her back in toward me. Okay, what are we waiting for? Let's open these presents. The day flashes by in a flurry of ripped up shreds of candy cane and elf decorated wrapping paper, cut plastic ties that restrain action figures in their boxes, and chocolate greased candy wrappers as the kids fuel their excitement with sugar trips. Lorraine works at preparing a late Christmas lunch. Roscoe providing assistance, mopping up the floor. I spend the morning putting together race car tracks, helping Lily begin her Lego dollhouse foundation, and clearing the mess of my critized wrappings that inevitably cover the floor in pieces. Dad, I want to fly the drone, says Nick. The highlight of my morning was watching Nick unwrap the gift he'd been talking about all year, a Falcon 1 safety drone. It was a beginner drone with limited flight range and capabilities, designed to spark kids' interest in flying and racing. Parental controls enabled limitations on range, so we could limit flying to just our backyard and at a relative minimum altitude. I already planned on breaking those rules. But for his mother's sake, they provided assurance that he wouldn't crash into the neighbor's window. Fair. I know, buddy, but it's missing a part. We'll have to go to the store. I help Lorraine set the dining room table, my stomach growling at the aromas drifting in from the kitchen. I can't help but feel like I haven't smelled a home-cooked meal in some time, and I almost get emotional when Lorraine sets the ham down in the center. This isn't my life. This life is filled with love and hope, like the Hallmark holiday movie that plays in the background. Something rattles internally. The box, weighted down, chains jangling, screaming to break free. I swear I hear whispers, someone calling my name, penciling. I can take you tomorrow. I need to pick up your sister's glasses. But we have to go early. David, you're still good to meet with the guy coming to take a look at the leak tomorrow, right? Asks Lorraine. Sorry? I ask, startled back into the moment. The leak. You can stay here while I take the kids tomorrow morning. We need to get it fixed before Aunt Janie comes to visit. Oh, yes, sorry. I'll be here, don't worry, I say. She gives me a look of concern, and I get a feeling again, like this moment is almost right, but not quite. As if someone shoved a couple of pieces of a different puzzle into this one, so that from a distance it looks correct, but up close it's clear the image is tainted. I down a couple of glasses of wine as we dig into the feast, which seems to ease the lingering tension inside me. The rest of the day is spent in a shower of giggles and roarous cries, spending the night ramping Hot Wheels with Nick and drawing pictures with Lily. We cap off the night with a board game frenzy. Nick wins twice at Candyland. Lorraine and Lily team up to take Nick and I down at Scrabble Jr., and I win. Sorry. I feel as if I've won an Olympic medal when my final piece lands home. There's a crack in the board across the word, imitating my own feelings. Looking at it causes the box to rattle more violently, and I'm relieved when Lorraine tells the kids it's bedtime. I stay downstairs while Lorraine gets the kids into bed. Christmas Stories for Kids lays on the coffee table. The night was supposed to end with me reading it to the kids before slowly backing out of the room, exhausted from the day, but overwhelmed with the sense of comfort and security only family can provide. It ended with me crawling into bed with Lorraine, already sound asleep. It ended with a sorry board in pristine condition, a puzzle appropriately assembled. Tonight, however, it ends with me falling asleep on the couch. Roscoe, get off. Get off me. Get off, you crazy pup. Roscoe's covered me in droll again. I must have made my way up to bed in a sleepy stupor last night. Hey, hun, are you awake? I glimpse Lorraine's festive robe. It's Christmas. A crippling pain erupts in the center of my head. Whatever weighted down my box shakes free with the eruption, and it begins to rise to the surface. I'm scared of what's inside. It remains closed, the pain increasing as it continues to rise. Whatever's inside is shaking, begging to escape. It knows that this reality is wrong, tainted. The rogue puzzle pieces pop out, disgusted in their attempt to disguise what is real. The box shakes with such violence, now that I swear it jostles my own body. David, can you hear me? Let's get a... The voice trails off, but the hand attached to it touches my arm, and it's only then I realize it is my body shaking. I'm trapped between two realities, but my mind refuses to accept either. The box is almost to the surface, and it's now I realize it contains death. I plead for it to remain unopened. I feel a pinch in my arm, a physical pain barely perceptible in the mental torture about to be unlocked. Then, a warmth starts to spread, outward from the pinch, up my arm, and through my chest. It makes it to my head, just in time to weigh the box back down once more. I'm trapped in limbo. One direction tortures me with what was. Another tortures me with what is. Time passes. Voices fade in and out. Appreciate you accommodating us on short notice and during the holiday. Yes, well, it's been disturbing how many cases are turning up. Anything we can do to help you combat it, we're happy to help. This is him? Yes, David Groggins, age 43. Police found him unconscious in Reynoldsville 3 weeks ago. Medical tested him then. He consumed it? Yes. Tropodiazolethol was found in his system. Heard they're calling it glitch on the streets. Is that right? Glitch, bug, defect, crash. It seems to only have found its way into methamphetamines at the moment, and we hope to keep it contained. Easier to track one drug supply over many. I read his file. History of drug abuse ever since his family died in a car crash. Day after Christmas, no less. Well, if your reports are accurate, it certainly helps us understand this drug's intent a bit more. Yes, additional testing is needed, but we're 90% sure he's been reliving the day before the crash. Christmas Day, 4 years ago tomorrow. We're not quite sure how it works. The drug causes a malfunction in the Levi system, essentially trapping a person in a continuous memory loop. We suspect it may attach itself to particularly powerful memories, like in this case, though we cannot confirm at this time. We were able to perform an autopsy on one victim a week ago. Damage to the hippocampus and frontal lobe were observed. Preliminary reports suggest those affected might know they're trapped in a memory, that they may experience what may be described as glitches throughout the memory itself. For this man's sake, I hope he doesn't know. Tomorrow's Christmas. Let him have Christmas with his family again. Clock is a tickin'. Freeze, jabroni. Don't make a move. Carl almost burst out laughing until he turned around and saw the camouflage gear-festooned, rodent-faced man pointing what could only be a large-caliber handgun directly at him. I told you don't make a move. Now turn around and put your hands behind your back, shrilled the man with the gun. Carl, a tall, thin, balding man with blue eyes, was no longer in a laughing mood. In fact, a sense of ice-cold terror was trickling down his spine. He'd never had a gun pointed at him before. Teetering on the edge of panic, Carl asked the armed man, "Just to be clear, do you want me to freeze and remain still, or turn around and place my arms behind my—" "Shut up, jabroni! Just do what you're told, and nobody gets hurt," barked the gunman. But Carl saw a cloud of confusion pass over the man's rat-like face. Immediately, Carl instinctively knew the man had never pointed a gun at anyone before, and that knowledge placed them on a level playing field, at least to a certain extent. "Hey, look, man, I don't have any problems with you," Carl said as calmly as he could. "I'm just here. Look, my wife got me a new tarp for our trailer for Christmas, and I'm just here to strip off the old tarp and throw the new one on. Who are you, anyway?" Carl's trailer was parked next to the Skookumchuck River in a remote, rural area of Washington State. Beautiful in the summer, but right now, it was December 27th, and freezing rain was dripping from the slate-gray sky onto the small collection of aging recreational vehicles parked along the muddy banks of the Skookumchuck. "I got no problems with you either, provided you're not a Fed. Now show me some ID." The armed man was still barking orders, but it was clear that the burst of adrenaline was waning, and his voice had lost its threatening edge. "Quit pointing that gun at me, and let me get my driver's license, okay? What's your name, anyway?" "And what are you doing here?" Carl said, as he showed the man his Oregon driver's license. "You went across state lines, huh? Not a bad idea. Well, shit. I guess we gotta stick together in desperate times anyways, don't we? The name's Victor, but you can call me Vic." "Damn nice to meet you, Carl. Sorry I was less than welcoming, but you know how it is," Vic said, tucking his pistol into his pants and drawing the back of his hand across his nose before offering Carl a manly handshake. "This here's my trailer," Vic said, casting his head toward an RV about 20 feet from Carl's. "Well, technically, it belongs to my Uncle Kevin, but he's too damn old and doesn't truly appreciate the magnitude of the threat." Carl took a deep breath. Suddenly, he felt somewhat restored to his equilibrium. He knew Kevin. Shit. Carl had been parking his trailer in these woods for about 16 years. He was at least casually acquainted with the other campers and fishermen who frequented the site. As Carl internalized the vital information that Vic wasn't just some random lunatic or escaped convict, he said, Holy hell, Vic. I know old Kev. Known him for years. Wait, the magnitude of... What is this threat you're referring to? Vic went still, and his hand wandered to his waistband, where the gun was tucked away. He gave Carl a skeptical stare, and then silently assessed their surroundings. The gentle roar of the river was a backdrop for the occasional chirp of a bird. But otherwise, all was silent. Vic's eyes flickered up into the evergreens and peered into the underbrush, but nothing moved. There was no breeze, and the rain was just a mist that hung in the air, along with the scent of moss. Carl belatedly realized that Vic had been out in the woods for a while. His jawline was scruffy, and the pores on his nose were black and visible. Dirt was caked under his fingernails, and his hair was stingy and greasy. What threat? Vic hissed. You playing games with me, Carl? Because you wouldn't be out here if you weren't keyed in, and I don't appreciate being toyed with. No. That's not what I meant. Listen, I'm just trying to understand your assessment of the threat, Vic. We need to share intel if we are gonna get a handle on the... Shit, man. You want some beef jerky? Carl asked, as he yanked a packet of Jack Links out of his pocket and tore it open. Vic accepted a hunk of jerky and gestured that Carl would follow him to his trailer. After about a dozen steps, Vic stopped in his tracks and surveilled the tree line for snipers. But soon enough, they were ensconced in the comfy confines of the almond beige wood paneling in old Kev's RV, chewing jerky and discussing strategy. Soundgarden issued softly from the tape deck as Vic chuckled and said, "Leave it to the computer nerds to completely disregard the obvious fact that we are gonna run out of digits. Goddamn educated idiots is what I call hello?" Vic could do a pretty accurate Jerry Seinfeld impression. Sweet fancy Moses. Yeah, but what'll happen? What's gonna happen when the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve? Carl asked, and Vic just shook his head and said, "Boom. Digital apocalypse. We run out of digits. Think about it. Our entire lives, ever since the invention of computers, we've been running on 2 digits. Wait, what?" Carl said. "There are shitloads of digits, like 8 or 9 at least. Let me ask you this," Vic said, leaning forward. "What year did you graduate high school?" "Class of '94, Carl said. "And the year you were born?" Vic insisted, leaning closer. 75. "What's your point?" Carl said, confused. My point?" "My point?" Vic said, locking Carl in his beady gaze. "My point is that when we go from 99 to 2000, boom, digital apocalypse, brah. Nobody has ever thought of the consequences. There are no guardrails in place, no safety net, Carl. Think about it. Realization dawned on Carl as he said, Vic, how the fuck did you figure all this out? Do you work for the CIA or something? Vic just chuckled and slowly shook his head. Ever heard of dial-up internet jabroni? My parents have it in my dad's office in the basement. Let's just say it's not just for email and porn anymore. I've done my own research. Fuck, Carl muttered, collapsing back into his chair. Do you think my ATM card will stop working? I'm afraid it's much worse than that, amigo, Vic whispered. It's effectively a Mayan calendar scenario. The end is upon us, and we are gonna need to be prepared. The fucking Mayan calendar? Carl, suddenly animated, exclaimed as he threw his truck keys to Vic. All hands on deck, Vic. You are the wheelman. I'll watch your six. We need to get down to the 7-Eleven before dark, fuel up the rig, and load up on ammunition. 10-4. Carl, Vic said over his shoulder, but he skittered to a stop just before they reached the truck, grabbed Carl by the front of his jacket, and said, We are gonna need a lot more of this jerky, Carl. We need to sequester as many more packs of Jack Links as we can. Do you read me? I read you loud and clear, good buddy. Now let's get to gettin'. Clock is tickin', jabroni. Clock is a tickin' heartbeat of the home. Why can't I remember? He thought. His mind would only reveal flashes of the afternoon's events. His head was on fire, sweat dripping down his face, like an addict on autopilot. Grant Liscombe burst through the front door, avoiding his mother in the kitchen. Like a spider returning to its web, his lanky teenage legs scurried up the wooden stairs of the old farmhouse to his bedroom. His arms flailed with uncontrollable fear as he yanked the dirt-covered shirt over his head, discarded it on the floor, then bounded to the bathroom, slamming the door. What have I done? What have I done? He muttered, lathering the perfumed soap through his fingers, frantic to wash the guilt from his newly calloused hands, watching the streaks of dirt dance and swirl down the rusty drain. His mind was confused by broken images of helping to clean the gutters, the ladder falling. Or was it pushed? The thud as Nick's body hit the ground, and the gleam of the metal shovel as Grant dug the body-sized hole. He confronted the reflection in the mirror, the gaunt, bloodshot, black-haired punk he had become. Oh God, what have you done? The reflection glared back with an evil grin. It began about a month ago, after his factory worker stepfather, Nick, lost his job. Grant's middle-aged mother, Jane, with little work experience, was initially grateful for the offer to stay at her aunt's derelict house, remotely located in the Haliburton Highlands of Ontario. Soon, she would regret it. They arrived late on an October evening, rain pelting down. The overwhelming stench of mold and decay nauseated Grant as he stepped onto the porch, past two white, rattan chairs, resembling broken skeleton bones. Like two cracked teeth, the front window panes whistled as Nick opened the door, and a rush of twisted oak leaves fluttered into the foyer, landing at the base of an antique grandfather clock. "Wow! Look at that beauty!" Grant exclaimed, smitten with the intricate carvings of the mahogany cabinet, the shiny gold filigree face, moon dial and hands, all in pristine condition, a sharp contrast to the rest of the house. "Hey, Mom, didn't Grandpa have a clock like this?" He set down his backpack, rubbed his hands over the smooth, flawless finish, inhaling the rich smell of lacquer and lemon polish, opened the case to wind the weights, then set the hands to the correct time. "Yes, he did," she answered, removing her coat and shaking the rain from her short blonde hair. "But not as old as this one. Remember what Grandpa always said? Amateur. The tick of a clock is the heartbeat of the home," they repeated in unison, their heartfelt laughter filling the room with his memory. "But seriously, Grant," she said, pointing at the clock. "That thing gives me the creeps," Grant shrugged. Then, as he tapped the pendulum to start the clock, he felt a sudden chill in the air, a quiver in the continuum of space and time. The walls around him seemed to expand and contract, like the lungs of the house had taken a deep breath. "Are you all right, Grant?" His mother's face concerned. "You look pale." "He's fine," said Nick. "Quit coddling him, Jane. He isn't a child anymore." He chuckled and gently kissed her forehead. "I'll finish bringing in the rest of the stuff." Grant sensed something was terribly wrong. Something had taken control of his body. His mind shouted with fear as his consciousness slipped deeper into an abyss, and a different, cunning voice answered, "I'm okay, Mom." After the family had settled in for the night, the clock softly chimed the midnight hour, and its demon contemplated setting its evil plans in motion. Returning to his room, Grant changed into clean clothes and put on some loud, heavy metal music. He suspected his mother was having issues with his new identity. He began rifling through his closet, not sure what he was looking for. Then, at last, he found it: the metal slugger baseball bat. As he held the handle, he confirmed that Mother was next. "Grant," his mother called from the kitchen, aroma of roast beef wafting up the stairs. "Are you guys done outside? Dinner's almost ready." The stairs creaked with warning as he descended each step. Slow and deliberate, bat at the ready. A satanic song blared out of his room, the heavy bass pounding the walls. Thump, thump, thump. "Turn it down," she shouted, stirring the gravy pot, steam filling the room from the whistling kettle. But his music grew louder. He continued his mission, unhindered. From deep inside, Grant could feel the raw hatred of the demon inhabiting his body, its cruel intention, but was powerless to intervene. Suddenly, like a beacon of light through the darkness, he heard a familiar voice. Remember the heartbeat of the home. It was Grandpa. Grant, the voice said, kill the heartbeat. Jane Liscombe turned off the stove and stormed out of the kitchen, down the hall, stopping at the grandfather clock at the base of the stairwell. I said, "Turn it." Stopping mid-sentence, she screamed and jumped back, just as the bat came crashing down, barely missing its target. Grant gripped tighter, then swung again, this time hitting a home run as the bat smashed the glass of the grandfather clock, dislodging the pendulum and sending it flying across the room. The chimes clanged noisily in pain as he swung again and again until the battered clock showed no signs of life. Grant's grandfather's undying love had helped him overcome the demon within him and return to H.'s former self. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, reaching out to hold her, just as Nick came limping through the front door, rubbing his head. "Nick, you're alive!" Grant shouted in surprise and relief, running to hug him. "Nick, are you all right?" "What happened?" Jane asked, still badly shaken. "I thought he was holding the ladder," he said angrily. "Must have fallen and knocked myself out." He looked around in disbelief at the shards of glass and pieces of wood scattered on the floor. "What the hell happened here?" "I'll explain in the car. We've got to leave. Now," Grant exclaimed as he helped Nick and his mother out of the house. They drove to the nearest motel, never to return. 2 years later, a young couple turned the key in the tarnished brass lock of their newly rented farmhouse in the Halliburton Hills, and as the warm sunlight shone into the foyer, a spectacular sight was revealed. A beautiful mahogany grandfather clock, a deer, a sign, and a tree prologue. The buck emerged from the line of pine trees, sniffed the warm fall air for any danger. He then strode across the mist-covered, grassy field, eyeing the weeds growing along the fence line. As he chomped on the weeds and grasses that grew along the wire fence next to the road, it failed to notice the timber rattlesnake that had been resting in the weeds as well. When the buck's hoof stepped on the rattler, the snake struck out and bit the leg. Once and again, the buck reared back and kicked at the snake. The buck then began to walk away, but only made it a few steps before the poison took effect. Its legs became stiffer, then stopped moving altogether. As the buck heart stopped, the buck tripped into the fence, knocking over one of the fence posts and a good portion of the fence as well. Attached to the fence post had been a no trespassing sign. The road Beatty Ave, next to the field, was rarely used, so the buck simply decomposed into the ground. Life carries on. 2 years would pass, and the buck had all but disappeared when David drove his delivery van down Beatty Ave. His mind was not on work, but on the loss of his wife and mother of their 3 boys, just a few months prior. Now working 2 jobs to keep the boys in the same house until the insurance company paid him what he was due. David looked at the row of Christmas trees in the field across the road. Like a tsunami, dread flooded his brain. This would be the first Christmas without Kathy. David had been dreading this time. Everyone told him the boys were young and would be fine. He would have to make a list of things to buy the boys over the next couple of months, decorate the house. Would he have to make cookies, as Kathy did with the boys? Or maybe he could ask his mother or mother-in-law to help. They were both always offering help in any way. His mind filled with thoughts of Christmas. He missed the turn off Beatty Ave to where the packages he needed to deliver. Cursing himself, he had to drive an additional 2 miles to find a driveway to turn around in and get back en route. Stay awake and pay attention, old boy. The last thing you need is to get into an accident, he said aloud to himself. David made his delivery and took his time walking back to his truck, taking deep breaths of the cool country air to clear his head. Putting his seatbelt on, he made the decision to call the grandmothers, and hard as it may be, ask for their help. He felt good after coming to this decision. With their help, it would be a good Christmas for the boys and himself. Driving back down Beatty Ave, he let his eyes wander over the row of pine trees again. This time, no tsunami of dread, but one of happiness. He slowed his truck to a stop when he saw a cardinal bouncing from limb to limb on one tree. David's mind seemed to relax for the first time since Kathy's death. After completing his deliveries, David returned home and immediately called his mother and then Kathy's mother. Both were thrilled to help. Over the next 2 months, the mothers talked to each other and made a schedule of when cookies would be baked and the tree put up. The boys were very excited to be spending time with the grandparents. Both grandfathers, after finding out what was going on, joined in. It was building up to be a good Christmas. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, David loaded the boys in a truck he had borrowed from his brother and headed out. After 20 minutes of dancing around questions from the boy about where they were going, why did they need Uncle Jack's truck? David pulled over to the side of road next to the field of Christmas trees. "What are we doing here?" asked the oldest, Tommy. "Well, I think we need a tree, don't we?" David asked with a big smile on his face. All 3 boys looked out the window at the field of trees and began to cheer. Chad, the youngest, began making chopping motions with his hands. "Can I cut first?" he asked with a huge smile pinned to his face. "Here's the plan." David told his boys, "I was thinking we'd dig up the tree and bring it back home. Then, after Christmas, we can plant it in the backyard. What do you think?" "Mommy always loved Christmas trees," Chad said, still holding the smile on his face. But tears were gathering in his eyes. David could feel the mood in the truck change with Chad's statement. He inadvertently popped the happy ballon. He had to say something to bring joy and happiness back. "Yes," she did. "That is why I thought we could bring one home and keep it all year in the backyard," he said quickly, hoping this would help. Bill, the middle child, broke the silence when he pointed to the largest tree and announced they should bring that one home. The other two boys cheered in agreement. "I love your idea." All David could get out before the boys were out of the truck and running across the field towards the large tree. David chuckled to himself and went to the back to pull out the shovels and wheelbarrow. Then followed the boys through the field. The boys were basically dancing around the tree they had chosen, even though it was at least 12 feet tall and wider than Uncle Jack's pickup. Boys, boys. David had to call several times to get their attention. "That tree is way too tall to even fit into the truck, let alone in the house. We can just trim some off the bottom to make it fit," Tommy said, looking up and down the tree. "Even if we could make it fit, there is no way the 4 of us can carry it to the truck." "Buddy, I was thinking of this one." David pointed to the tree he had seen the cardinal in a few months ago. "It's kind of small," Chad announced, looking from the large tree to the smaller one his dad was standing next to. "Yeah, Dad, Chad is nearly as tall as that one," Tommy added. "We can put it on a table in the living room," Dived improvised. "Plus, digging this one out is going to hard enough." Tommy shook his head, then clapped his brothers on the shoulders. David geared himself up for a fight with Tommy. Since Kathy's death, Tommy seems to have decided he was suddenly a man and didn't need to be told anything by his father. "Come on, guys. Dad's right, that one will be easier to dig up and carry to the truck," Tommy said, shocking his father. The boys and their day spent the next hour digging and pulling on the tree to free it from its grasp on terra firma. Moving to the new tree to and into the truck took an additional 15 minutes. On their way home, they stopped by a gardening center to get new soil and a large yellow planter. Yellow was their mom's favorite color. While shopping, Chad explained to the salesperson the pot was to put their mother in for Christmas, and then put her in the backyard. David had to quickly explain exactly what they were doing. The salesperson smiled and laughed and stated she understood. When they arrived home, David and the boys moved the tree to the edge of the truck edge. They removed burlap they had wrapped around the roots. David instructed them to pull off the earth from the roots before they put it into the new pot. He then went inside to clean up and start making dinner. David had just started browning the meat when Tommy ran inside. "Dad! Dad, Dad!" he called, running into the kitchen. David pulled the pan off the burner and looked at his son. "Look what we found on the tree." Tommy had 3 small, whitish objects in his hand. "What are those?" David asked, whipping his hand on his shirt, then picking up one of the objects. "Looks like a stone, but didn't feel as heavy as it should have. I think they're finger bones," Tommy said, with a serious, straight face. "You see, the bigger one goes right here on your fingers." Tommy placed the longer of the bones on his finger between the first and second knuckle. "Well, Dr. Leet, you may be right," David said, with a little more concern in his voice than he meant to. "How many did you find?" "Just these 3, Tommy replied. "Tommy, we found some more funny stones," screamed Bill from the garage. David grabbed the remaining bones from Tommy's hand and put them on the kitchen counter, then pushed Tommy towards the garage. Once back in the garage, standing at the back of the truck, Chad was holding a hand full of bones that looked just like the ones Tommy had brought him. "Okay, boys," David said, looking outside the garage to see if anyone had heard Bill screaming his announcement. Not seeing anyone, he ushered the boys inside. "Let's get washed up for dinner now." "But Dad, we're not done yet," Chad mentioned as he pulled another clod of dirt off the root ball. David paused. "It will be easier once the dirt is all dried out." During dinner, David was quiet as the boys chatted endlessly while eating tacos. Halfway through dinner, David excused himself and took his cell phone into the living room. When he came back into the kitchen, he addressed the boys. "Guys?" David started, then took a deep breath before continuing. "Don't be." David's mind went blank. He wasn't sure how to continue. "What the matter, Dad?" Tommy asked through a mouthful of tacos. "No easy way to say this." David bravely started, then immediately faltered, looking in the faces of his sons. "Okay, here it is. The special rocks you found today, cleaning out the roots of the tree. I think they are bones from fingers." Tommy, who had made the discovery, was not surprised. Bill looked at his fingers, as if the bones might be his own. Chad took advantage of everyone else being occupied and grabbed the last taco. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser, followed by an unmarked police car, pulled into the driveway. Over the next hour, the 2 police officers examined the root ball, while a crime scene detective collected the found bones and searched the roots for more. The detective had taken David into the living room to speak to him. Tommy, Bill, and Chad stood in the driveway and watched the police working. David came out a short time later and, without speaking to the boys, walked over to the neighbor's house and returned with the neighbor, Mrs. Atwell. "Boys, I need to go with the detective, and I'll be back. Until Mrs. Atwell is going to watch over you. I want you on your best behavior until I get back." Bill was the only one who responded. "Okay, you be good too," which brought a smile to David's face. The police finished collecting the bones and searching for the tree ball. They took the 2 shovels used by the family to dig up the tree and then they left. It was after dark before David returned and collected his children and took them home. Over a pizza dinner, he told them he had taken the detective to the field where they dug up the tree. He explained that they had sort of illegally took the tree, but the detective said not to worry about it, and we could keep the tree. The two younger boys cheered. 3 days later, the detective called David back and explained they had found a complete skeleton in the hole they had removed the tree from. A forensic anthropology team responded and determined the body had been buried between 50 and 60 years ago. David expressed his thanks to the detective and said he would think about how to break it to his sons. David heard the detective take a deep breath, then explained he will have to do it sooner than later. While on site, the detectives found 7 more bodies buried under tress in the field. The field used to belong to a notorious mafia associate. The detective believed the bodies in the field were victims of mob hits. The news has already caught wind of the story, so they may be showing up for interview with the man who broke so many open homicide cases. Now it was David's turn to take a deep breath. He thought of Kathy and smiled to himself. She always had a way of making him forget bad things. Thursday night. Rain pattered on the roof of Grandma's house as Christine settled in after Thanksgiving dinner. She sat on the plush carpet and started playing solitaire on the coffee table. Mom was hollering at the football game, but Christine was doing her best to tune that out. Grandma was in the kitchen, finishing the dishes. Dinner itself had been the usual stuff: turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, green beans. It was a nicer, heartier meal than Christine usually ate. Now she was pleasantly full, enjoying her cards and the relative peace and quiet. Why are the Lions attempting a field goal? Mom roared, jumping up. She bumped the coffee table and fell back onto the couch. The game went to commercial. Oh, Christine sighed heavily, picking up her fallen cards. "Sorry, kid," her mother said, rubbing her sore knee. "You know how it is." Christine nodded. It was always like this with football and true crime for some reason. She was glad it was only Mom here being noisy instead of the whole family. Grandma stepped into the living room, wiping her hands off on a towel. She hung it on the back of one of the wooden chairs at the little dining table on the opposite side of the room from Christine and Mom. "I wish you'd let us help you," Mom said. "Dishes would have been done a lot sooner." No, Grandma said. "After being away for so long, I almost missed doing my own dishes. Besides, there weren't that many." "I tried to get the older kids to come," Mom said. The game was back on, so her eyes were on the TV as she spoke. But they had other plans. In-laws, I guess. And you know how Dad is. With this last remark, she gave Christine a joking slap on the shoulder. Christine was glad her father and siblings weren't there. When they all got together, they talked too loud, and it would get too hot, and they would pick on and embarrass her. No, she much preferred this little get-together. I keep telling you it's fine, Grandma said. She sat on the opposite end of the couch so that Christine was between them. She smiled at Christine. It's kind of neat that we have 3 generations here, Christine nodded, smiling. Touchdown! Mom yelled and jumped up again, narrowly avoiding the coffee table this time. Thud. Oh, for the love of... Grandma cut herself off. What did you knock over this time? I hope you haven't broken anything. Shh. Mom held a finger to her lips and whispered, That wasn't me. I think it came from outside. Grandma leaned back on the couch and put her feet up. Probably just the rain then, right? Mom said. She seemed unsure, but she sat back down and was quickly reabsorbed in the game. Christine hesitated, card in hand. Grandma, she asked. Her voice always came out softer than she expected. Are you sure it's nothing? Of course, Grandma said proudly. After a month of running around Europe, staying in all kinds of places with all kinds of people, these little noises don't frighten me anymore. Was it scary in Europe? Christine asked. She had to repeat the question because of Grandma's hearing and Mom's hollering. When she finally got the question, she answered, Oh, no. I had a few near misses, but that happens anywhere. Actually, I think you should go sometime. You'd like it. Christine smiled and went back to her cards. She had only placed 2 cards down when she heard another noise. Crash. Her head whirled toward the sound. She noticed Mom and Grandma do the same. Mom muted the TV and looked back at them. You heard that too? She asked in a hush. Grandma nodded. Mom patted her pockets. Ugh, must have left my phone in the car, she said. She looked at Grandma. Where's yours? My cell phone? Asked Grandma. You know I can't keep track of that thing. Mom looked to Christine. Christine slid her phone out of her pocket and held up the black screen. Why do you think I'm playing solitaire? Mom dragged her hands down her face. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Grandma said. It's probably nothing. I'll go take a look. No, Mom said. You stay here with Christine while I go take a look. Do you still have my old baseball bat by the door? Grandma rolled her eyes and gestured to it. Mom picked it up and gripped it tight. She tossed on her raincoat and bolted the door. You two stay here. I'll have a look around the back. Be careful, Christine said. Mom laughed and ruffled her hair. I will. She kissed Christine on the top of her head and went through the kitchen and out the back door. It was silent as they waited, listening. The house isn't that big, Christine said, wringing her hands. How long could it take to look around? Grandma wrapped Christine up in her arms. Your mom's just being dramatic, dear, she said. She'll probably go out and search the whole woods before she's satisfied. What if there's something out there, like a bear, or a vampire, or a maniac with an axe? Christine cried into Grandma's shoulder. Grandma shook her head. Christine, where on earth would you get ideas like that? Christine pushed Grandma away and plopped down onto the couch. I know it's ridiculous. I'm just worried about Mom. After a pause, she added, and you know the only thing she loves more than football is true crime. I was practically raised by Keith Morrison. Christine and Grandma looked at each other, confirming to each other that they had both heard it. An unearthly groaning. It sounded close. Christine shot up from the couch. Something's happened to Mom. I just know it. Grandma grabbed her arm. Don't be rash, dear. Christine suddenly wished the rest of her family were here. No wild animal or axe murderer would attack such a large party. She wasn't sure if the same could be said for supernatural creatures, but maybe her sisters or brothers or father would know what to do about them. Christine tugged her arm free from Grandma's grip. I'm going after her. You can come with me if you want. What were we thinking, splitting up like this? That's how they always get you in horror movies. Christine pulled on her raincoat, flipped up the hood, and flung open the door. Lightning cracked. On the porch, a figure was silhouetted against the storm, carrying Mom, unconscious in its arms. Grandma cried out and rushed forward. Rain instantly soaked her to the bone. Christine ran out after her to help. Wait, the stranger said. It was a man. Stop! Give me back my daughter! Grandma shouted. She and Christine kept pulling on his arms, trying to free Mom from his clutches. Dorothy! The man cried out. They all paused at the mention of Grandma's name. Finally, the man huffed. Can we go inside so I can explain? Oh, Sean, I'm so embarrassed, Grandma said. They were all back in the living room. Mom was laid out on the couch with a compress on her head. Christine and the man, Sean, were sitting at the dining table. Grandma placed a steaming cup of tea in front of Sean. I didn't recognize you, Grandma continued. Sean chuckled. I don't blame you. Anyone would be nervous in this situation. Excuse me, Christine cut in. But, who are you? And what happened to Mom? Oh, Grandma said. This is Sean, dear. I met him while I was in England. He saved my life. She's exaggerating, Sean said. Not so, said Grandma. He pulled me out of the way, just as I was about to be hit by a bus. Sean sipped his tea demurely. I told him he could come by for a visit anytime, Grandma said. I tried to call, but I never got any answer. I remembered she doesn't use her cell phone, so I decided to surprise her, Sean explained with another little chuckle. Oh, well, thank you for saving her, Christine said. And Mom? I found her just in front of the porch. She must have slipped off the step and hit her head. Christine sipped at her own tea, feeling silly. She was glad the whole thing was over. Thud. Christine, Grandma, and Sean all looked at each other. They had all heard the noise. Christine looked at Mom. She had rolled off the couch and was groaning as she climbed back up onto it. Anyone know who won the game? She asked. A price to pay. I should have known better. As cliché as it sounds, nothing in life is ever free. It all started with my dream trip. We were bouncing down the streets in the French Quarter to the tune of live horns blaring and drums pounding, forcing this mystical string of rhythm that shivered up from my toes to my hips. I had over-elaborated in mixed spirits with colors of red, orange, and green, doused in crushed ice. I had saved up an entire year for 3 whole days of fun. The ultimate girl trip. Now here I was, trapped in this padded room, all by my lonesome. It's better this way for everyone, at least in my opinion. Now back to how I got here. I digress. I promise it will make sense later on. Anyways, we were partying with all the other thrill seekers. The weather was perfect. I mean, it was hot, but that's what you want in July in New Orleans. Hot, humid, and rainless. Everybody was spreading Southern love. Gold, silver, purple, and green beaded necklaces rained down like candy from a kid's pinata. It didn't matter if you raised your top or not. The love for tourists was overflowing. The street vendors were making their rounds as well, so quick and elegant, with the words that rolled off their tongue. It was like they were singing you a nighttime lullaby, weaving a spell of sweet nothings and joy. Little did I know, that is exactly what they were doing. I have never thought of myself as an overly superstitious person. I say overly because I did avoid having my feet swept and never opened an umbrella in a building or house. Outside of that, a black cat was just a black cat. I didn't believe in witches, shamans, witch doctors, or black magic. I understood the undertones of voodooism in the bayous of Louisiana. I took a mythology class during my undergraduate studies. I even did a research paper on it. I knew a good story when I heard one. And that is exactly what they were. Stories. I digress. My attention was drawn to a street vendor that had his face painted in gold. He had on a jester hat decorated in colors of purple and silver. He had on a purple blazer with purple dress pants to match. His feet were nestled into pointed green boots trimmed with white. He had multiple beaded necklaces going down his left arm and was shooting confetti out of a wooden pipe that resembled some type of flute or oboe. I made my way closer to capture a video. The vibes from that one was something magical. It was 90 degrees, and he wasn't sweating. That should have been my first clue. Something was off. People were passing by, pointing and laughing. I got closer, but still was far enough away that I looked as if I was just a part of the crowd celebrating on Bourbon Street. He placed the pipe down on a little box as an elderly couple stopped to admire his painted face and outfit. He tried to hand the woman the necklaces on his arm, and her husband, I assume, shook his head no. The guy was like 6 feet tall, but did the daintiest curtsy I had ever seen, and I couldn't contain my giggle. Neither could the couple, and the man accepted the beads. When the couple tried to give the beads back to the court jester, he shook his head no and put his hands up to signal 20. The husband tried to give them back again. The jester took 3 of the beaded necklaces back and then put up one hand to now signal us as the total. His wife laughed beside him. I mean, I get the humor. What better place to get swindled than the streets of New Orleans, baby? Memories to keep for a lifetime. He gave the hustler the money, and then they bounced down the street. I had recorded the entire scene on my phone, and when I looked up, we had made eye contact. I felt almost locked in his trance. The beginning of my demise. I looked down at the stupid, tarnished rose gold ring with the blue opal stone that was now trapped on my finger. Sorry, there I go again, jumping around the story. Again, we locked eyes. I was more than a little tipsy and had the audacity to wink and giggle. He put his confetti flute back to his mouth and blew in my direction. He wasn't going to hustle me, and that was for sure. I know how it works. The group I was with shifted, and somehow we got closer to him and his show. This time when he blew, confetti made it onto my shirt. He had a cheering audience now. The air smelled of booze, sweat, and cigarette smoke, mingled with hints of too strong cologne here and there. But that did nothing to deter the crowd. He presented a new sleeve of beaded necklaces in multiple colors. The flute pipe went back to the box. People were so drunk that they were totally fine with paying price for necklaces you could get from the nearest dollar store. But not me. They were being thrown from balconies for free. I couldn't hide the skepticism from my eyes. I loved the camaraderie, but no scams will empty my pockets this day. He locked his eyes with mine again, and then moved towards me. This time, he grabbed my hand and twirled me around in a circle to the beat of the live music that was playing in the streets. My cheeks were aching from smiling so hard, but I was not going to fall for his swindle. My friends were cheering me on in the background, happy that I was finally letting my hair down. I was a little dizzy from the alcohol and the spinning. The jester then enclosed my hand in both of his, and when he pulled back, there was a ring on my finger. I don't know how he did it, but I wasn't paying for it. Take it back! I screamed over the music and noisy patrons. He shook his head no and put up his hand to indicate $25. I laughed and repeated myself. He changed it to $15. His light brown eyes seemed amused by my defiance to be swayed to part with my hard-earned money for a ring I could have gotten from a bubblegum machine. To be honest, I had already been hustled when I went to the marketplace the day before and paid $75 for an ugly dress because I was sold a dream. He went down to $10, and he almost had me until a lady behind me said that she would buy it for $25. I tried to take it off my finger to give it back, but he stopped me and gave me a huge smile. His teeth were about the prettiest I had ever seen, complementing his gold-painted skin. He really looked like he was out of a painting. He had a broad nose, and he had a set of long lashes that any woman would be jealous of. A handsome fellow, he definitely was. Again, not a bead of sweat, and his skin was flawless. He nodded, and then pressed his lips to the back of my ringed hand before shaking his head at the woman, and spoke. "This here trinket is for the one who doubts the ways of the bayou. She has been chosen," and then gave her a beaded necklace instead. I felt a flush of heat go over my entire body. The accent made it sound so poetic. Everyone continued to cheer him on until all the necklaces were gone. And then that was that. Or so I thought. He turned back to me and winked. As we all dispersed, my party and I made our way down to the end of Bourbon Street. And when it was time to go back up, I tried to take the ring off my finger to give it back, but I couldn't get it off. In theory, the good things, when we came back to his area of business, he was gone. Little did I realize then that he meant what he said when I was chosen. All that was left in his spot was an empty box and pieces of confetti that littered where he once stood. No matter how many times I replayed it in my mind, I still can't figure out the pivotal moment when I chose my fate. Or better yet, my fate was chosen for me. Why me? No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get this stupid ring to come off. At the time, I thought it was all of the salty food and alcohol I consumed on the trip. But when we made it back home, it was still glued to my ring finger. Of all the fingers he could have put it on, it had to be the one that indicated I was taken out of the marital market. Like I said before, I have never been an overly superstitious person. My beliefs are my beliefs. When the first dream hit me, I thought it was just a coincidence. I had a dream that I was drowning. The golden man with the perfect teeth was looking down at me from a black boat, smiling. Instead of beaded necklaces on his arm, he was holding a funeral wreath with a name I recognized on it. The odds, right? Or at least, that is what I thought. Until 3 months later, the person actually passed away in a boating accident. The dreams continued. Vivid nightmares of people I know perishing to the other side. Every dream turned into some kind of forewarning of what was to come. Always him, always a new funeral wreath, always the smile. The creep worked some kind of black magic on me when he gave me his ring. I tried telling my friends and family that we were entertained the Grim Reaper himself, and he was punishing me with these visions because I wouldn't fall for his con. Everything has a price, even entertainment. I didn't even know I was giving up anything. I guess I got swindled after all. The group that went with me had no recollection of the gold-painted man with a jester hat on his head. What they did remember is me getting into a rather large argument with a stranger about the origins of voodoo, and screaming that the natives of New Orleans' beliefs are based loosely on fairy tales, and that I apparently offended a lot of people. Even if that was the case, no one could tell me how the ring came to be on my finger. The video that I thought I had recorded when he was hustling the elderly couple had disappeared from my phone. The first professional I saw for the prophetic dreams told me I worked too hard, and maybe I needed to take some time off and stay away from alcohol. They had me complete all these different tests to prove that I was in my right mental state. In the midst of it, no one could get this stupid ring off my finger. By the time I got to the fight professional, I was told that maybe I should just keep my intrusive thoughts to myself. And death was a part of life, and try to live in a normal manner. I see death. I don't want to see it, but I still was able to see it all the same. I was cursed by a New Orleans jester, all because of the difference of opinions. If only I could go back, I would have definitely said no to that first drink and kept a clear head the entire, instead of being doomed to a room of padded walls because everyone thinks I lost my mind. Here I was, safe. But let's go back to the beginning, distorted. I left home 5 years ago. As soon as I crossed that stage, high school diploma in hand, bypassing my peers, swept up by a wave of crying mums and proud grandparents. I was done. The boot of my car held as much of my 18 years of life as I could stuff into 3 boxes and 1 suitcase. I'd armed myself with a bank account full of every tip and paycheck I'd received from my waitressing job, and an early acceptance offer from a university 2 states away, as far as I could get from a place I'd once called home. The night before, as my parents sat in some fancy restaurant for a reservation with friends they'd forgotten to tell me about, undoubtedly arguing with each other behind plastic smiles, I packed away my clothes and books and bed sheets in neat little rows until my room was almost barren. Apart from the old wooden furniture, My bedroom was cleaner than it had probably ever been, and I laughed at thinking about how, if the situation was different, it might finally make my mother happy with me. At 10:07 p.m., they arrived home, my father slamming the door as their whisper shouting floated upstairs. I knew they weren't being considerate of the fact that I might be sleeping, but rather they worried about the possibility that a commotion might alert the neighbors, that they would see through the cracks in the foundations of their picture-perfect dream house. They didn't come in to say goodnight. Hadn't since I was 8, and old enough to read myself to sleep. As I pulled out of the parking lot and left my formative school years in the back windshield, I thought about what my parents would tell their friends, the neighbors, the busybodies in the grocery store checkout line. Would they lie and tell everyone I had accepted a scholarship for some prestigious university overseas? Or maybe I'd traveled to Africa to work in humanitarian aid, something they could brag about and say, "She's made us so proud." Possibly, they'd invent a job with NASA or an internship at Google. They hardly knew enough about me to know what I'd actually be studying or what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was sure they wouldn't be bold enough to tell the truth, that their daughter had disappeared without warning while they spent their day in board meetings and having sex with their personal assistants in hotel rooms paid for by their companies. There would be no missing persons report or flyers offering an egregious sum of money in reward for my safe return home. Nothing that would cast a shadow on their spotless reputations. I would fade further into the background of their lives, as if a figment of their imagination, only resurrected when one of their friends spotted me in one of the professionally shot family photos, stilted and artificial, and asked after me. That's if they kept the frames up at all. My parents would have to dig up my coffin from the deepest parts of their memory, plaster a smile on their face, and grit their teeth. They would spin some vague anecdote about speaking to me on the telephone last Tuesday and how well I was doing. And maybe they'd go visit me at Christmas. They'd have forgotten all about me by the time they brought out the first course. I mean, they hardly remembered I existed, even while we lived under the same roof. That's why I was so shocked when they called me one Sunday, 5 years after I left town and never looked back, and asked me to come for a visit soon. I had no idea how they knew my number. I'd changed it after moving and never given them the new one. That's why I didn't respond for almost a minute after hearing my father's voice through the tiny speaker. I almost convinced myself I was dreaming or having a stroke. Maybe I'd temporarily slipped into an alternate reality where it was normal for my father to have my number, to call me out of the blue and invite me over. Anything to explain why the fuck he was calling. There was no special occasion. Nobody was sick and dying, and there was no upcoming birthday to celebrate. They just wanted to see how I was doing and make amends They missed me, they said through the crackling of the landline. I wondered if they had finally snapped and gone crazy. If they'd learned a sense of humor, and this was some kind of prank. Or perhaps they had early onset dementia and had forgotten that I had never been much more than a roommate they had complained about having to spend their hard-earned money on. I told them I would think about it and immediately hung up. I spent the next 2 days trying to forget about it altogether until I came home from work to a letter in my mailbox, a one-way ticket dated 2 weeks from then, set to arrive at the airport an hour out from the town I grew up in. On the front of the envelope, my address, written in my mother's sloping, elegant handwriting. Nausea settled in the pit of my belly. How did they know my address? I'd not kept in contact with a single person from my childhood. The hairs on the back of my neck tingled as the growing sense of being watched settled into my skin. Then a thought popped into my head. Had they known the whole time? Had they known where I was all these years and never bothered to reach out? Suddenly, I was 12 again, and realizing my parents were never going to care about me the way the kids at school were cared for. This confirmed what I had always known. I was alone in this world. It took some deliberating, but I decided I would go. I would see what it was they wanted from me, and if they really had changed. I told myself I wouldn't give in to whatever manipulation tactics they might pull. I would be strong and remain distant. And when it was done, I would demand that they never contact me again. Even still, my bones were heavy with paranoia the following weeks. I elected to hire a rental car to drive from the airport to their house. There was no way I'd give my parents the satisfaction of driving me, of having any modicum of control over me once more. And this way, if I needed to leave, I wouldn't be forced to wait 20 minutes for a taxi. I parked on the street. The house had been repainted a soft eggshell color instead of the previous gray and rows of gardenias lined the fence where there had once been neat box hedges. I breathed deeply through my nose before raising my hand to knock. My mother pulled the door open as my fist made contact with the wood, causing me to stumble back. She must have been watching me from the window. Waiting, she was smiling. That was strange in its own right, but it was weirder because I knew it wasn't my mother's smile. Her smile never reached her eyes. She would never do anything that would cause lines to form on her face. Her smile always gave you the sense that she was laughing at you rather than with you, pitying you. My mother did not smile, but when she did, it was always forced. This was a genuine smile. It was happy. I felt immediately that something was deeply wrong. A shiver ran through my spine. There was something wrong about her face. It was fuzzy around the edges, as if she was wearing a mask. I rubbed at my eyes with closed fists, trying to clear my vision. But the effect remained. I figured I was tired from my flight, but the closer I inspected her, the clearer it became that something was off. It looked as if someone had tried to draw her face as accurately as possible. After taking a long glance at a picture of it, my mother reached towards me with outstretched arms and drew me into an embrace. I stood stiffly, with my arms by my side, trying and failing to remember when she had last hugged me. Surely at some point in my childhood. Definitely not after the age of 10. She invited me inside. This house was nothing like the one I'd left. Cold and sparse, decorated as if a model home. It was warm and filled with color and light. I wondered if somehow my memories of my horrible, lonely childhood had managed to warp my recollection of the house itself. But I knew that wasn't right. This new hallway was illuminated by a warm glow, and funky paintings hung from the walls. The dining table was set with a red gingham tablecloth that my mother would have called tacky, and a vase of sunflowers. In the kitchen, my father took a large tray out of the oven before pausing to take a long pull from the neck of a beer bottle. I had never seen my father drink beer before. He used to say it was the common man's drink, and that real men drank whiskey. He turned to say hello, and where his face had once been clean-shaven and professional, stubble grew freely. Like my mother, something was off. And it wasn't just the facial hair. His nose was smaller than I remembered. Eyes just a fraction too far apart. From afar, or at a passing glance, it was the man I'd grown up with. But as he stepped closer to greet me, his features shifted. It was like looking at an optical illusion. And when I changed my gaze, the true image would slip into place. They watched me. To anyone else, it might seem they were worried, for I hadn't said a word since my mother opened the door. But I could see it in their eyes, the suspicion. They were wondering if I'd noticed, waiting for me to say something. I stuttered out empty platitudes about being happy to see them, and they shuffled me over to sit at the table. Dinner was pistachio-encrusted chicken breast served with a peach and goat cheese salad. When my father announced the menu, I stopped short, fork raised halfway to my mouth. My mother was allergic to pistachios. This was a fact she despised, as she perceived any sort of weakness to be a flaw, and my mother was not flawed. I said as much, but my mother just stared at me with an odd look and told me she didn't have any allergies. She never had. And then she went on eating, cutting her chicken into bite-sized cubes and placing them delicately on her tongue, never breaking out in hives or becoming short of breath as her throat closed up. I was beginning to feel as if I was going out of my mind. I managed to stumble my way through conversation, letting my parents do the brunt of the work, barely processing a word they said. I excused myself to my room, citing exhaustion and an early night. My father followed with my bag, and as I reached the top of the stairs and turned right towards my old bedroom, he laughed at me. It wasn't the same boisterous laugh he'd had at dinner when discussing his golfing buddies. It was sharp and croaky, like it didn't belong to him. I hadn't seen my father laugh enough as a child to know which one was more his own. My bedroom was to the left, he said, with a curious look on his face. Don't you remember? And he pushed past me, guiding me down the corridor to a room I knew was not mine. I followed him slowly. Inside the doorway, he dropped my bag, calling good night over his shoulder as he moved back downstairs. I locked the door. The furniture was the same, but there were pictures on the wall I had no recollection of. Myself and my parents at the beach and in the snow and with my grandparents. These were not my pictures. My mother hated the sand, and the first time I'd been to the beach was with some uni friends a year after I left home. I had never met my grandparents, let alone taken photographs with them. They had both died before I was born. I sat down on the bed. It was made tidily, with the same striped sheets I had packed in a box all those years ago. I sat there for hours, listening as my parents cleaned and made their way to bed. When I was sure they were sleeping, I slipped out the door and into the rental car. As I drove to the airport, heart racing against my rib cage, I knew one thing for sure. I was certain that those people were not my parents, so today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.